Welcome to your First 60 Days podcast, a series of conversations where we are cracking open the code for better executive onboarding. Today, I am joined by my guest Nadia. We've had a great conversation, firstly talking about the importance of what you can do in your pre-boarding phase, getting really intentional around how you want to show up, and then within the onboarding, how to bring head and heart to have equal importance. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Nadia, it is an absolute pleasure and delight to have you alongside me this morning. Thank you so much for creating the space.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So, of course, you know the whole thing that I'm really passionate about. I want to bring the wisdom to more people is around how to enter and land in an organization, especially when you're in a leadership role. And I always want to start with our own experience because I think that's what connects with people. What have you learned?
I think it's changed over the years. I think being in a technical field,
Yes.
you've almost like trained to start with the mind and the head and your analysis. And definitely me being a scientist, I think early on in my career, I've put a lot of attention into what am I coming into in terms of the job itself? And so, what is the data telling me? What is the analysis? What are the projects? Of course, the teams and how they're working, but there was more head and thinking and onboarding myself into the what, and probably less into how do things get done here and how are people feeling about me coming into a new role or about where the organization is at. And I think what that created over time is you kind of miss some of the human elements. It's like you're coming into a book and skipping a chapter and wondering why is the next chapter not making sense. And so kind of run into all different types of challenges along the way. And what I've learned is the head is super important because that's what you're getting brought in to do.
Of course.
But the heart is and if it's probably more important in terms of how do you connect with the organization? How do you connect with the culture? How do you connect with the teams at the deepest level? And understanding maybe what is being said, but equally what is not being said to you. And creating that environment where you actually can onboard yourself into the whole system is something that I'm glad I learned. I really have carried it with me over the next few roles.
Imagine you were starting a new role tomorrow. What would you be doing that allow both of those to live equally?
It is about going very deep, but also very wide. And into the whole system. And so it's no more about just the projects and the work. It is about understanding your consumers, your customers, your suppliers, walking the factories and really trying to understand where are people feeling in terms of the journey they've been on and your arrival within that journey. Because then everybody goes through a different journey. And connecting with the people at a human level becomes really critical. And I think for me, creating an environment where people feel safe to share their journey, to share what their fears are, to share what their dreams are, becomes really important. And that builds trust in the organization. And I think allows the curiosity to thrive in a way where people feel safe to say more rather than feeling like, why is she asking these questions to me?
Because I have the pleasure of working closely with you over some time. Something I know you're really strong and I know that you're picking up both anecdotally and practically great feedback on is your instinct. Instinctively, you're picking up signals. Could you share how you nurtured that?
It's a great question. I don't think I've always had that. I think one, I had to learn it. And the second thing, I had to learn where does it come from and how do I trust it? I needed help, to be honest with you. I think one of the things that I now do in going into new roles is almost like an inquiry on me. I start with, I'm leaving a previous role. What have I loved about the experience that I'm coming off to, or I know I'm going to coming off to over the next few weeks?
Yes.
What are the things that have worked for me really well and I want to keep? What are the things that probably have not served me well that I want to let go of? And I actually do it in a form of feedback. It's almost like if I take myself out and I'm looking at it as, I'm leaving something behind. I was really keen over time is how do I develop it? And I think part of it is, again, back to the head and the heart. Yes, listening to what the head is saying, but also deeply listening to how I'm feeling. And starting to, I think some of the things we spoke about is your whole body send you signals. And the more you understand what is the signals that your body is sending you and what does that mean? What am I feeling the energy in my gut? What is that telling me about the situation that is happening? And then I think started learning to observe this in others. And so acknowledging it sometimes or asking for permission to say, I've noticed you have. The more kind of you practice it, the more I've started feeling comfortable to it. And I think I've started trusting that feeling because I think the more that I listen to it, the more I go, okay, maybe that is real and maybe it is something that I need to do about it.
Could we now broaden out the individual onboarding experience to think about how you help a team come on board? How do you help a team absorb you as the new leader?
I think there's been many experiences. There's been some experiences where you get brought in almost from outside the organization and the system into the situation, and sometimes you kind of come within it, and so it's almost you change a relationship with your peers, for example, with your stakeholders. I'm one of these privileged people, so I moved many different roles within an organization. I think an assumption that I've had and something that other people said to me is because you're part of the organization, you can hit the ground running. Do you really need an onboarding? Because you know what the system is like. And I think as I've gone through time, I think it's a myth. If you're part of the organization, you don't actually need an onboarding. You can start acting fast. I think it's a safety blanket to almost get started quickly on action. And I think there is a lot that get missed if we're not taking advantage of such an amazing window of opportunity, by which I definitely was advantaged in later in my career when I've learned that no matter what, even if you're in the organization, you need to do the onboarding because the relationship changes. And definitely my relationships within the system changed. And so I did need to go into the breadth and the depth in terms of really being attentive and listening, really being humble in terms of because I'm part of the system, I might be learning things where, oh yes, I've been part of some of these decisions, but now someone is giving it to me from a different perspective. That learning phase is so important. And I think allowing teams, allowing myself to start with, and allowing teams and the leaders to take that space if they're changing jobs as well, because sometimes it's almost like there's a shuffle, one role changes, and so allowing people that space, like, when people say leading by example, that you go, if I'm taking the time, that's the permission for other people to take the time. Something that I'm really passionate about is getting out of the chair and going and seeing. And so, traveling to regions or going and seeing the trade, trying the products we're talking about, putting myself in the shoes of the consumer or the customer and really trying to understand, because context is a beautiful thing. And so the past has context and things has happened for reasons. And so when I go and see, I understand significantly more and have much more empathy. That's kind of some of the things that I definitely carry with me now and really encourage teams or peers to take.
I want to speak now with a very practical lens for a moment. What do you do around, in terms of the construct, setting your direct reports up when they're new?
And, truly onboarding into what is the job that people are coming in to do. So there is almost the job to be done. Obviously, there is the teams, and how do you onboard into the teams, the stakeholders, and there is the culture itself.
Yes.
And so, what is the whole ecosystem? And so, looking at the layers and allowing the leaders to have the space to look at these layers is something really important.
Yeah.
I ask people once they do their kind of, let's say, discovery phase, is how do we come back and recontract and reprioritize what is being found? Because you can start from a place and then you can go, well, I've learned.
I've discovered.
Learned and discovered things that are very different than
Yes.
what you told me. And so allowing that space for actually further learning and discovery. So it's like a loop, right?
Yes.
It never stops.
Yes.
But allowing that space for reprioritization, I think it's really important. And I think one thing is I do look for, does the leader need a coach? Definitely mentors.
Yes.
Because it's about transitions and having the space and the safety for someone to go to and just work with. And I love teaming people with very different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I work in R&D, and typically I will not match an R&D leader with an R&D mentor.
Understand. Yes.
Because I think the benefit is when you take the details out and you listen to what really the person is trying to work through, and so I've seen some beautiful relationships get built and beautiful mentoring. And I do think coaching is really important at the right time, because the person has to be ready for it.
Absolutely.
And they want it. The beauty about it is digging deep into some habits or some values or some things that, I hear a lot of people going, I do this, but I don't know why. And I know for myself, there's a lot that I've gone, I do this, but I don't know why. I think coaching helps you to kind of pick it out and understand the themes or the values that you're holding close to your heart. And some of the ones that you need to let go of.
I know that you have lots of experience in working in complexity. And one of the layers that comes that induces complexity often is when different companies are coming together, whether it's merger or acquisition or some kind of significant transformation. What would be your wise counsel around how to navigate and get that understanding whilst also having a job to be done?
I think acquisition is one of the hardest things organizations go through. And it's not only for the acquiree or the acquirer, it's actually for both, because there is the human part. It is so big.
Yeah.
And the culture part is so big. There is a phase of excitement, maybe in both, maybe in neither. But there is phases of excitement.
Energy.
There is energy that comes with an acquisition that carries you for a certain time. And then there is a whole lot of realization that goes, what is just going to happen now? And definitely on both ends. And I think having that to start with, having that empathy to go, everybody's going to be in a different place. Being sensitive and being aware to the human side of an acquisition is a really, really big one. I think culturally, no matter how similar you say cultures are, there are differences in the culture. And I think there might be differences not in the visible culture, it's in the invisible culture and invisible furniture that sits behind that. And so it's the invisible lines that you need to be aware of. When you go, we are both joining a new business. So when you set it up like this is neither this or no that, because the essence of a business getting acquired, that means they've been successful. There's value in what they offer to the consumer and the customer. And I think honoring that value and honoring how did they come into that place, it's super important. And I think having the humility to actually learn from it is super important. And equally for the business that is acquiring, there is a lot of success that has come to have the ability to acquire. And so learning from that success is really important. And deciding almost is going, what has been super powerful in both.
Yes.
And how do we preserve and protect that
Yes.
into something that is even more powerful into the future? I think it's even engages people when you use that language. And equally, being humble about what hasn't worked in either camp, it's the vulnerability, allows the others to go, actually, this is challenging for us too. And so you feel more that there is more common than there is difference. But I think it's tough. Even if I'm excited at the beginning, I might go through a phase where I'm fearful or I'm anxious, or in being respectful of that, I think is really important.
What would you call out as the big watch outs when it comes to being the onboarder?
I think jumping too quickly into action is a trap. The reality is, especially in business, the business is not waiting the 60 days or the 90 days for people to onboard. So it's real. One advice that I got really early on is, if plans change, don't abandon phase. And I've carried this with me because a lot of the time I'd go, I want to do this, or my hope would be that the person coming in can achieve this in the first 30 days.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen because life gets in the way and the business gets in the way. And how do you not abandon it? How do you just phase it? Just go, okay, it's now going to happen over 45 days.
Yes.
The 90 becomes
Yes.
110.
Yes.
And that's okay. People appreciate that. So for me, it's be patient. Be patient to truly protect the learning. And it's learning truly to learn, not learning to go, okay, well, I've had these plans and now I've justified them
Tick,
by the
tick.
data
Yes.
that I've collected. And so truly learning to learn is a really important thing. And I think back to this human element is, how do you look at you within that ecosystem? How do you
Yes.
protect you? How do you protect your well-being? How do you protect your family time?
Yes.
That it doesn't become exhausting.
Let me follow that last thread, if I may, the energy exhausting one. How do you look after yourself when you're in this?
This is an area of big learning for me, because I think in the past, it was this classical thing of, I just need to work harder, or I just need to work longer.
Yes.
And it's just a phase. It's just the next week. It's just the week after. And then I'll be fine. And so next week comes, then the next week comes after that, and I'm still not fine. And I think the reality is, in a business, there is always more work than there is time. Always. And the step in terms of what is my priority, maybe even in life, and putting work within that context of what is my purpose and what am I here to do and where does it sit within my priority. It's really helped me having that, just to go, okay, that's where it sits within my whole system, if you want to call it that. I think then there is all the practical advice in terms of sleep and nutrition and protecting the things that you really value. That you feel better after a run, then how do you protect the run? I think one thing that I definitely really value is, I know that sometimes if something is on my mind, I need to talk it over. How do I protect the space for me and have the people that I know I can go to? And these might be peers.
Yes.
It might be a mentor.
Yeah.
It might be a coach. It might be, but I know that I go, okay, I'm mulling on this maybe more than I should.
Yeah.
And what do I need to do about it?
Yes.
And kind of pick up the phone or
Yeah.
or go for a walk or go meet someone. What I've learned is then it gives it its real size. It might have gone really big on my mind, then it just becomes much smaller. The other question that I ask myself, will this be an issue in a year's time?
No, love that.
And that really helps me, because I go, oh, it's not an issue. Okay, 6 months time. And then I think sometimes I arrive, it won't be even an issue tomorrow. So why am I worried about it? So I think just, I've learned different tools, and I think talking to different people, you kind of learn from them in terms of how they cope.
Some folks that are listening will share the phenomenon where they have global responsibility. How do you, while you're in onboarding phase, how do you manage being able to get that global context within a time pressure?
I am not an expert on this, but I've got some of the things that I'm trying to do.
Yes.
And what I'm learning from is, I think communication is key, because I think we're all humans.
Yeah.
And I think, sharing with the leaders to go, I would love to come and visit you in here, but I won't be able to do that till this time. Or can we find the time together? And just sharing kind of what you're going through
Yeah.
or your prioritization. It's helped the people who are receiving you.
And I love that.
And
So it's co-created almost.
It's co-created, but I think it's just being vulnerable again. And I start with that because something that is really important for me is going and seeing. You know, I love going to factories because it's where our products are made, and it's what are we serving the consumers. It's so I love seeing how our products are made. I love seeing the passion that the people have and the love they put into the products that they make. And the thing is, I learned so much, not only to the culture of the business in that region, but the culture from a customer's point of view, the expectation, and trying to learn to see what is similar to what you probably have experienced and known, but what is new.
Yes.
And especially now, the world is so dynamic.
Yes.
And it's changing at a pace that I think we're all staring at, and we know that is going to get even, faster and faster. And so being able to really put yourself within that global context and having that curiosity and the willingness to learn, and then being able to co-create with the teams there, I think it brings much more value. And so this is definitely something that let's say I'm doing, but I'm learning from as well.
Yeah, work in progress, I can hear. What would be the things that you say, if you have the chance to craft your own onboarding, here are my absolute things that I want you to take into consideration?
My first advice will be start with you. How do you start this personal reflection and protecting that time for that personal learning? And it might be self-indulging, but it's really, really makes a big difference, because the impact of the leader is going to ripple through. So my first one is protect that time.
Yeah.
You can decide how do you do that, because there is a way of how do you do that. You can do it by yourself, you can seek help, you can do it as a kind of a full inquiry, you can do a small one, but I think do one. I think would be my first message. I think my second message is this learning phase, and how do you go broad and deep at the same time, meet as many different stakeholders, the people, the customers, get to know the products, get to know what's made the business successful. What is the pride that sits in the organization? Why do people love being in this business? And equally, that hopefully will create the trust and the safety for people to then to say, let me tell you what's not working, or let me tell you. And that's time is really important, not to make decisions. Your word will travel, and it will travel very fast and very far. And so being really conscious about what is said and not said in that stage is really important. The next one for me is this prioritization that I spoke about, is the contracting and the recontracting, the prioritization, that phase of recontracting, reprioritizing, and almost consciously doing it is something that is really important. And I think sometimes it's missed because you start hitting the ground running.
One final area I'd love to delve into, which you've alluded to there, is say a little bit around what you've learned around the importance of the transition between you and your predecessor. What have you learned around that being a successful, easy, insightful handover?
I think my big learning is we don't do it well.
Okay.
I think we rush. Everybody is more like rush through that phase to it's at best I've been in situations where I think my offboarding was a coffee chat to just go, okay, that's the handover. I think I would love for us to pay more attention to these transitions because of what actually happens, not only for the people who are transitioning, but for the teams below and for the whole organization. There is a level of, depending on what's happening, it can it's a lot of emotions because it can be excitement, can be anxiety. I think one of the learnings is how do we pay more attention to that phase and the role of that phase and actually in the next phase, because I think having this closure and having these learnings and even the benefits out of talking to the leaders who came, definitely benefited out of talking to a lot of the leaders that came before me, and almost I think listening to their insights, asking the questions of what is your advice to me?
Yeah.
If you had your time again, what would you
Yes.
do? What was the context by which
Yes.
this decision was made? And I think, people are really, really smart. And so a lot of the time it's not data that was missing. It's decisions and it's competing priorities, because I've kind of learned from them. And so, it's definitely something that I think organizations need to give more attention to.
Nadia, that feels like a good place to pause. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute delight to have you alongside today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks for chatting, and good luck for the launch of the book.
Thank you.